So for this week's game, I looked for some inspiration on the internet, and I came across this really awesome hidden gem called Burn Band. And this is by one of the members of the Sock Pop collective, Tom van den Boogaard. And he's making an awesome new version of this game, Burn Band, which I'm super excited about. So for this week's game, I wanted to actually make something that was complete. Something that I could actually potentially sell for like $1. Something that people would actually pay money for. And this game, even though it was free, I feel like they could have charged at least a few bucks for it. I'm sure that's why he's making that new version of the game, which is gonna be super cool. To my knowledge, I believe this game was made in a pretty short amount of time, because it looks like something that could be done pretty quick, but it was so smart. Like the way that he made everything in a very minimalistic way, but still had such a lot of exploration and really immersed you in this world. I realized, you can make a game like this really quickly if you're smart about it and you understand the experience that you're giving to people. So for this week, I want to make a game that has a similar vibe, like an explorative city that makes you feel like you're really there. Lots of creatures going about their daily lives, and you just kind of being a witness to it. So I had the idea to make kind of a lo-fi, chill-hop, pixelated game that has a similar vibe to Burn Band, but still stands on its own. So let's see how it goes. The first thing I did on Monday was write out a game design document. I quickly threw together what I had for my idea and vision for the game, and I wrote down what the content would need to be, what the mechanics would need to be, and what the aesthetic would be like. This past Saturday, I actually already made a quick mock-up for what the game would look like, and who our protagonist would be. So I'm going to go with this aesthetic and with this base, and move from there, which would allow me to go really quickly. Next, I forced myself to make a map of the entire city within 20 minutes. I set a little Pomodoro timer for myself and got to work. While I was doing this, I had so many ideas for what the game would be about. And I decided that the game would be about this mechanic that lives in this little community, maybe on Mars or some other planet, where the citizens can't leave the planet. They have to stay within the confound of this small city, and thus they make the best of it. And so your job is to simply do routine maintenance on different facilities, and when you're done you can go to the nightclub or to the bar or whatever. And that was going to be the entire game, just a daily loop of doing your job and doing whatever. I feel like it would be a cool, kind of sad game, and I really got excited about the idea of making a game like this. The next thing I did was add a character controller to the game. Just super simple walking controls, left going left and right going right, and the character walking animation turning on and off. Next, I took my huge map that I made and threw it in the game and blew it up so that it was up to scale. I'll use this as the basis for my game and start making the art around it. Next, I started making some really basic art assets that will compose the cities outside. I added a basic square with a little bit of a gradient on it, which is something I use in almost all my 2D games, because it's something that has a low amount of memory, but I can use it in a ton of different situations. So I'm going to be using this square and just recoloring it for a ton of different background art. I then had the idea to make it easier to make the backgrounds, to just use a terrain and modify the terrain with Unity's built-in tools. I ended up really liking this idea, and then I decided, why not make the houses and buildings 3D as well? Turned out, it looked really great, and I think I'll just go with this. Now that I've settled on using 3D objects for the environment, I set about setting up the entire city using cubes and spheres. I also set up the above ground terrain so that we can walk up above the ground as well as under the ground. The next thing I needed to do was make it so that we can interact with these doors and go inside the buildings. So I quickly coded a interact script that I will be using for all interactables in the game. Next I had to figure out how I was going to position the rooms and the characters in the game. I already decided that the characters would be 2D and the environment would be 3D, but I needed to figure out how exactly I was going to do it. I decided that the quickest and most efficient way for me to do this would be to have the characters actually be in the buildings themselves. I'd have to go back to all the buildings I already made and turn them into rooms, but I figured it would be easier than making everything in a separate scene or something. I also ultimately decided to make the character move in 3D space as well. It will still be kind of limited to this small, narrow space, sort of 2.5D style, but overall the character will have 3D movement capabilities. This will actually just make it way easier for me to make the character move around and navigate throughout the little environment I'll make. Next I was trying to figure out how to make the characters go up these towers, and after tooling around with the idea of using just stairs, I decided that it would be cooler and more sci-fi to have cool elevators going up. But I don't model very well, so I decided to maybe use this asset pack from Cinti, which is a big sci-fi city pack, and I thought maybe I could use a lot of the models and props in the pack and put them in my game as well. That'll make decorating the city really easy. And what's great about using this stylized filter is that it makes the game look unique despite using derivative assets from the asset store. So on Wednesday, I first started tinkering around with adding in the decorations from that asset pack into the game. I realized though that since it was Wednesday, I didn't have that much time, and in order to make my development faster, I could actually just use the demo scene that was included in the asset pack. I mean, it wouldn't be really good for a full game, but right now I'm just trying to make a prototype, and I think it would be perfect. So I went to an old and sadly cancelled project of mine that had a bunch of different alien creatures, and I decided that these would be perfect for the new city that I'm making. I threw a couple of them into the scene just to see how it looks, and to be honest, I'm really liking it. It's got this cool 80s retro synthwave vibe that I think would be really fitting for the project. Overall, I feel like this is an awesome look and feel for the game. Time to move on and make this game into an actual game. I decided to make the entire movement all 3D, so that you can go inside the buildings and stuff as well. I made it so the creatures always face the camera so that it has that faux 3D effect, even though they're all 2D. I think this matches really well, and it creates this weird, kind of bizarre feel that I think is really captivating in a way. Next I decided it was time to get to work on the actual creatures populating this little city. First thing I did was add a little bandstand in, because I love the idea of weird, funky alien instruments. I then created a dialogue system for the game and made it so that the creatures could talk to each other and barter. And then I ran out of time for the day because I'm really bad at time management. So on Friday, I tried to make all the little scenes for my game, but I only ended up really making this strip club scene, and these guys making graffiti, and this little bank scene. The rest of the day, I kinda got stuck working on this population system. I downloaded this NPC population system off the asset store, which worked really well, but it did take some time to set up and it was kind of buggy, but ultimately it looks pretty awesome. So yesterday was supposed to be the last day for working on the game, but I didn't quite finish the entire scene. So I think today I'm just gonna put a bunch of characters in the scene and do what I can to make the exploration at least worthwhile. I don't think I'll be able to add any goals, but having some exploration and having some little things to find will make at least a 5-minute playthrough of the game worthwhile. So I figured the least I could do for the last day of my game is at least fill in the little shops and the gaps that are already set up in this scene. So first I added these two guys having a conversation in front of their sweet hover car. I added these two having a possibly sketchy conversation in the alleyway. And I made this robotic scientist creature working on this robot. I then just threw a bunch of random creatures in random spots and just decided to call it a day. So the game is now released, and I don't really know what I'm going to do with it next. I'm going to see how people respond to it, and maybe if people like it, I'll move on and make a bigger version of the project. I really like the aesthetic, and I feel like it has a lot of potential. But right now, I'm realizing I need to start shifting my focus towards making money, as sad as that sounds. So if people like this, I will make a bigger version for 99 cents, but if people don't like it or it's just not really getting any kind of traction, I think I'm actually going to shift towards mobile games and focusing on simple experiences like this, but with like more of a game. So what did I learn from this game? I learned a lot about quickly making a nice aesthetic and atmosphere. Studying Burn Brand taught me a lot about how to use placement and how to use sound effects to create an immersive environment. I'm really excited to work on my next project, whether it be this one or a new one entirely. And yeah, I just want to thank you guys for watching this video. Check out the game, it's on itch.io for free right now, and let me know what you think. Anyway, thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe and like. Thanks again.